Hi, y'all. Western Lawman and Fortra Law partner Steve Ernest here. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to note this interview was recorded before my firm's recent rebrand. At the time of filming, we were still operating under the old name, and I just want you all to know that any mention of the former firm's name in this episode refers to what is now Fortra Law. Same trusted team, new name, but the same mission. Thanks for watching, and now let's dive into our new episode. We're glad you're with us today. My name's Steve Ernest. I'm one of the partners at the Gerasi Law Firm. I am also the Western Lawman, and on today's episode of Western Lawman, we are delighted to have with us our friend and colleague in the industry, Mitch Willett. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Tell us, Mitch, about what it is that you do.
I am owner of SBS Trust Deed Network. We've been in business since 1978, and I've been the owner since 1998. And very simplistically, we process non-judicial foreclosures in California, Arizona, and Nevada. And quick plug, S.B.S. stands for Simply Better Service.
Do you think you live up to your name?
Heck yes.
Okay. And have since 1978?
Yes.
When you were 3 years old?
8.
8?
Yes.
All right.
I'll age myself happily.
We're practically the same age. However, you're older.
Excellent. Works for me.
It was evident before I said that, wasn't it?
Of course.
When you say you process non-judicial foreclosures, what do you mean?
So California statute, Nevada statute, and Arizona statute are very specific as to how a trustee is to perform the foreclosure processing for a lender on a deed of trust. So we simplistically process the foreclosure action on behalf of a lender on any type of deed of trust, commercial, residential, vacant land, multifamily, etc. The statute spells out recording the notice of default and the notice of sale, taking the file to sale in California and Nevada, and Arizona is specifically just a notice of sale state. So we perform the tasks required by statute.
Among the tasks, I've represented creditors, mostly real estate, secured creditors, for pushing 3 decades now. And I've attended non-judicial foreclosure sales, and one of the things I noticed as a young lawyer was the person, the auctioneer at the sale, was almost always a guy in shorts with a hoodie and a clipboard, and he was standing on the courthouse steps, like actually doing the auction. Have you ever been the guy in shorts with the clipboard?
I have never been the guy in the shorts with the clipboard, but I have attended many sales also to observe the same. But no, I've not.
And it's true, I'm not making this up about the shorts and the clipboard, that guy?
Correct. Absolutely. It can be any individual. The auctioneer can be any person with the clipboard who has the instructions from a trustee like SBS to take the property to non-judicial foreclosure sale at the direction of the lender.
And you hire him?
Correct.
All right, and you're the one who gives him direction?
Yes.
So you're the interface between the lender and the auctioneer for the bidding instructions, say?
Correct.
How have the bidding strategies changed in the last 5-10 years, if at all?
That's all primarily based on market. Since we've been in business in '78, we've seen many different markets, and it's really the lender's strategy. On most of the residential foreclosures we did back in the 90s and 2000s, there were a lot of bidding for less than the total debt because there was no equity in the property. But when the equity market changes and there is equity, then lenders typically come out at full debt and will bid full debt for their properties. But when there's no equity, they will typically have a bidding strategy that is 85% of fair market value to less in order so that they don't get the property back.
So the credit bids are more prevalent now than they were in the past?
As equities deteriorate, yes,
Right.
Credit bids will become more prevalent.
And is there something about this 2/3, 67% that factors into those?
That new legislation is the bane of my existence currently.
I'm glad I brought it up for you then. So please tell us.
No, we can adapt. Obviously, we get all kinds of legislation over the many years that changes the landscape on how we must perform the task, but it's really up to the lender. The 67% bid requirement in California was intended to help homeowners preserve their equity when there is equity, but it deters the actual the flow of the foreclosure process that's been in place, because there is equity. And I do foresee in the future, when there may not be equity, it could be beneficial. I just don't see what the benefit is in this current environment.
One of the reasons that lenders use non-judicial foreclosure sales is you don't have to involve the courts and you don't have to involve attorneys like me. Do you find that there is a role for law firms or lawyers in non-judicial foreclosure proceedings, or can the lender just sort of deal with it themselves?
I do believe there's a role when necessary, when the asset is multiple assets, multiple properties. There may be personal property involved, inventory when it's more of a commercial type loan. Yes, attorneys have their role based on the way the loan is originated and the assets that are involved in that, as well as when the borrower takes their own actions that would require attorney involvement to keep the process moving forward.
So there's a future for a person like me?
Absolutely.
How about that? I'm delighted to hear it. Your cufflinks, I notice, are those manta rays?
They are.
You have a story to tell related to the ocean, I'm led to believe.
I've always been an ocean person, born and raised in Southern California, grew up in Santa Ana, and then in my teen years, my stepdad was very generous to give me exposure to a lot of yacht racing, a lot of Newport Ensenada races, did a Trans-Pac way back in the 80s. So yes, I've always been a fan of the ocean, and I surf regularly. Tell
the viewers at home, what is the Trans-Pac?
Trans-Pac is a race from Long Beach to Honolulu. Sorry, a yacht race from Long Beach to Honolulu on a sailboat.
What, pray tell, is the difference between a boat and a yacht?
Well, in my definition, growing up, a boat is a vessel that can float with an engine. A yacht is something that has a couple of sails and typically a captain and some crew that will race it with some wind.
And you've been the captain, or you were the crew?
I've never been a captain.
All right.
Always a crewman, usually a four-deckman, back when I was a little bit smaller.
A bow guy?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
you go aloft in a blow?
I do.
Look at you. This is very brave. Very brave.
I did, I should say. I haven't been racing in many years, but it was definitely a fun childhood.
What kind of boat did you do the Trans-Pac on?
It was a Santa Cruz 70, I believe.
A sled?
Yes.
You were moving then.
Yes.
What was her name?
I don't remember. Again, just a deckhand.
This story is becoming a bit suspicious now, I think.
It was all through my stepdad. We had a Erickson 41. That's what we used to race in the Newport Ensenada and Santa Barbara, Hardways, etc., Channel Islands. But the actual, I do not remember the Santa Cruz 70. I'm like 50s, man. I can't remember that stuff.
like shirts with the boat name on it?
Yes.
Had a lot of that kind of stuff?
Yes.
White pants?
Absolutely.
White pants.
The boat name for my stepdad's boat was called Winsome, W-I-N-S-O-M, because he won some, he lost some, so he wins some.
All right. I can appreciate that. And you wore the deck shoes with no socks and the white pants?
Sperry's, yeah. The Sperry topsiders. I still have some Sperry topsiders.
You still wear that with no socks?
I do.
How, Mitch, did you get involved in the private lending industry?
So private lending, again, I've always done foreclosures. My mom owned the company before I did. She acquired it in the mid-'80s. I came out of school. I went to University of San Diego, graduated with my business degree in '92. I was going to go to law school, get a law degree. I got a couple semesters under my belt. But mom...
You went to a year of law school?
I went to Pepperdine.
Nice.
The MBA,
nice
JD program. It was a cool program.
Yeah.
But mom offered me an opportunity to own her company someday. So ultimately from '92 to '98, I worked, I learned the business, and I bought it from her in 1998.
We're here filming this for the folks at home at our Captivate conference, which is kind of our flagship event for the year. And I'm told that you and S.B.S. has a long-standing relationship with Captivate. Tell me about that.
Yes. We've been a part of the private money, hard money lending world for many, many years. And when Captivate originated, The Captivate team reached out, asked us to be a part of it, and happily have been a part of it ever since, and love to exhibit and make new friends and continue to network with old ones.
15 years we've been doing Captivate. Do you know who the very first sponsor of our very first Captivate was?
I do not.
It was you.
Was it?
You're the,
Excellent. I did not know that, actually.
you're the very first one.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, we're grateful for your enduring relationship with us. We're happy to have you here.
Been a wonderful relationship.
What, other than sponsoring our conferences, what do you do with Jurassic, the law firm, if anything?
Whatever we can. So we all exist in the same landscape. Over the years, we have been a foreclosure processing partner with the firm, but that changes with different decisions in regards to relationships and your portfolio with your client base, because there was a period of time where Grazi actually didn't provide the foreclosure services to the clients. But anything I can do, you and I have a relationship where we try to refer business to one another with different lenders who have the need for attorney services, and I do my best to reciprocate.
You're sort of stepping on my lines, because my very next question is, what do you do with the litigation and bankruptcy team?
We, in our space, a lot of our client relations, or a lot of our clients have their own relationships already, but not always, and there's always a time where they do want an additional resource. So wherever I can reciprocate to the Grazi firm and to yourself personally, I do my best to do so.
Thank you. This might be a little bit unfair because your folks ran S.B.S. and then you worked there for a while and then you bought it. But when you were sort of starting out, like when it became yours, did you find, oh my God, I've got the keys and this is different than I thought it was? Or was it just sort of, well, it's Tuesday and it's a lot like last Tuesday and I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing?
It was great to not have my mom looking over my shoulder telling me what to do.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was a great opportunity. I just liked the idea of running with owning my own business, learning, and I've learned over many decades that the lending environment, private money, conventional, whatever it may be, is ever changing. So it's always just fun to pivot and change when new legislation comes up or when new best practices come up by attending conferences like this with the peers and colleagues to say this is the new way of doing things. So I just enjoyed growing and learning.
And it changes a lot, right?
It does.
You know, you sort of think, well, trustee sales, it's always going to be the same, and especially over the last 5-6 years, it's changed quite a lot.
It has. They've changed the way that we have to process based on legislation, based on somebody believing there's a better way to protect the borrower, which I agree with. Just again with the 67% fair market value new bidding process. That's a new change that was effective this year of 2025. But yeah, over the last 30 years, we've seen many changes to case law and to legislation that have just required us to change the way we do it, and we adjust and move forward.
Right, now people can get continuances or delays in their foreclosure process just by listing their property, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's another new piece of legislation where the borrower must provide the trustee a valid listing agreement signed by seller and a licensed real estate broker, and in doing so requires the lender on residential first deed of trust a 45-day postponement. And then the borrower is afforded another 45-day postponement that within that period of time, had they already requested the 45-day postponement based on a valid listing agreement, they can then request another 45-day postponement if they have a valid purchase agreement signed by a broker, buyer, and an escrow company demonstrating escrow has been opened. Then another 45-day postponement can be requested. So
sometimes it just seems like these things are going to go on forever, right?
it does.
Yeah. And then they go, well, the other things, tell me some of the other things that borrowers will do to forestall or prevent it. Well, they're not going to prevent it. It's going to happen eventually. But what are their tricks to stall foreclosure, and what do you do to sort of thrust and parry to get the property sold?
The most common is bankruptcy. They file a bankruptcy of some type, typically a 13 or a 7, which is then where we engage the attorneys. on
Which
behalf
attorneys
of the-
would you think about engaging were that to
possibly
happen?
a Garazzi attorney in the bankruptcy department over at Garazzi and under Steve Ernest's direction.
I hear those guys are good.
Absolutely. And again, but that's directed by the lender, but SBS can maneuver that as the lender requests, and then the lender would pursue getting relief from stay. And in a Chapter 13, it is sometimes beneficial and the borrower is able to maintain their property. In a 7, it's a liquidation, so most commonly the foreclosure will occur sometime in the future, and it's just a matter of when.
So I'm a little bit reluctant to ask you this one because sometimes people don't want to admit that they've ever made a mistake. I'm suspicious you never have. But if you've got a friend or a colleague and you've heard of a mistake that they've made or something that they would have done a little bit differently, can you share with us what it would have been?
For the trustee side, the most common error would be missing a mailing. A lot of what we do is mailing certified and regular mail of the notice of default and the notice of sale and other documents, or recording a document. What has occurred, I've heard by rumor, is that every once in a while we'll get to a trustee sale and do a title date down, as it's called, and find out that the notice of sale never actually got recorded like it was supposed to. I've seen that happen once or twice, years and years ago, but it rarely happens now with technology.
So I hear this one from clients now and again, which makes me suspicious you have as well. There are these, I've got 4 addresses where our guy may be, and then there's a guarantor and he's got a couple of addresses, and there's all these different addresses. Do I have to send it to all of those places? What's your advice in that regard?
Our office says yes. If you have an address in your loan file, provide it to S.B.S. or whomever your trustee is to mail to it. If it is on the deed of trust, and you have a very extensive deed of trust with lots of guarantors and LLCs, et cetera, my office is going to mail separately to each individual LLC managing member to the property address and potentially the business address of the LLC that may be contained in page 1 of the deed of trust. So we mail to all names, companies, and addresses separately.
I think that's so smart. Early on in my career, I started giving the following advice to clients. It's worth the price of a letter, right?
Yes.
And then in your case, the letter's already written. Like you've got your NOD or your NOS, and it's going to go out. So you just make a photocopy, which costs basically nothing. And the price of a stamp, what is a stamp, 52 cents now?
It's in the 60s, I think.
Oh my God.
I think it's
Inflation.
68 or 69.
All right. Well, even so, at 70 cents, let's say generously, and you have to send, well, you don't have to, but if you send it to 25 people, it costs you $17. It's completely worth it. The alternative is you didn't send it a couple of places, and now you've got a problem with your foreclosure that's going to cost $30,000 to remedy or unwind or something. It's so much smarter to do it the way that you guys do.
Correct. I agree. It's definitely worth the investment. Your return on investment is there.
How many things are there in life that you can buy for 70 cents, really?
Very few.
Well, Mitch, I sure appreciate you participating today. I've had a good time, and I hope the folks have learned something about foreclosure, and we appreciate your partnership and your friendship.
Thanks for having me, and it's been great. Love it.
All right, good stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you.